Right, lots happened at the bottom of the table, of course, over the last 48 hours. Sean Dyche sacked at Nottingham Forest after that goalless draw against Wolves. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Spurs, of course, getting rid of Thomas Frank after their defeat midweek. Jules is still with us. Craig, you weren't here yesterday, obviously, to react to it. We spoke after that Spurs game and their poor performance once again. You were surprised a little bit because when we were discussing it...
No, I wasn't surprised. I just thought, I thought they would not bend the knee to the supporters as quickly. But clearly they've taken stock of not just the recent performance, but don't forget they qualified in the Champions League and they've got a bye. Can you believe it? But I think, where they are in the league, and I know they've got a lot of injuries, but where they are in the league, the performances, the results, the way that they've been battered by teams and they've had to come out in the second half and try and dig themselves out a hole, the early sort of descent from players to the manager while walking off the field, the lack of discipline from your captain, which is not necessarily your fault, but you have to sort of deal with that and try and sort of, make a big decision on people like Romero. I think there's been so many things that I just felt that Thomas Frank is, to be quite honest with you, I think a little bit out his depth, jumping from the expectations at Brentford and how they played at Brentford with the physicality and the counter-attacking play compared to what they do now with Keith Andrews, which we talked about. They try and play actually football now and do play some good football. I think going into Tottenham and trying similar stuff is not what they wanted, and it certainly wasn't happening. So I think it's a club that doesn't know what direction it wants to go in, if I'm being honest with you. I think they're swimming about in the pond and they don't know what side to go to. They just don't know. They're sinking. So what decision they'll make now, I don't know. But yeah, I know you said it the other day that I think he should go, and I think it would be hard to argue against that. I just felt the board would sort of bury their head for a few more weeks and see if it would go away. But I think clearly they've looked at it and said, no, listen, things ain't getting any better. And forget this pie in the sky about being in the Champions League, because the first half decent team they're going to come up against, they're getting knocked out. Yeah. It's as simple as that. They're getting knocked out. And so the league is the important scenario for them, and they are spiralling to a relegation battle, so it had to be done.
Jules, we've heard stories about Thomas Frank and where it went wrong, for example, on the training pitch. Just give the headlines of what we've heard over the last 24 hours.
I mean, there are so many. And again, I don't want to go again after him. For me, it's one of the most embarrassing, humiliating tenure that we've had for a manager in one of the big clubs in England. I'm not talking, smaller clubs or lower divisions. For a top club in England, the stint that he had at the club is, for me, one of the most embarrassing, from being humiliated publicly by Van der Ven and Jet Spence after that game where he asked them to go and clap the fans and they didn't even look at him, to the Arsenal Cup in that away game at Bournemouth, to obviously the bad results that we've seen. I mean, over the last 10 league games, I think they've taken as many points as Wolves, for example. So from start to finish, it was bad. But I think for me, what was the biggest problem is the lack of authority that he brought and players not respecting him, which could be on the players, sure, but when you arrive in a big dressing room like that, and Craig knows it, with big egos, big name players who've won more than you, because by the way, you've won nothing in your career, which is true. If you don't have that authority, if there's no discipline, you've lost already, even before the season started. Then, if you can't even engage with your players at training, making your training sessions interesting, where they actually feel, okay, he might not have won anything, but there might be something interesting here, you've even more lost than just by the lack of authority and discipline. And that was also the case. There's so many incidents, there have been so many incidents, so many problems. For me, he thought, probably very naively, that he could be exactly the same than he was at Brentford. Same guy, same training methods, same methodology, same philosophy, and just take it from Brentford, South London, Southwest London, and take it to the north of London, to Spurs. You can't coach Spurs like you were used to coach in Brentford. It doesn't work. It just doesn't add up. You need to step up. It's a massive step up, by the way. Brentford, where everybody's happy about anything. They're just so happy to be in the Premier League. To go to Spurs with high expectations, high pressure, fans who demand, probably a bit too much, but demand far more than the fans that you met at Brentford. And yet, he never really understood that he had to try to step up, to adapt himself to the new environment that he was in. And that, again, was a massive mistake from him.
Wait, didn't Jules say at the start of that sentence, I don't want to pile on him here?
Yeah. I don't want to pile on him. I'm just going to take the baseball bat to him. I agree. I totally agree. Out his depth. Unfortunately for him, out his depth. And it's, in terms of the coaching scenario from clubs, it's kind of akin to Xabi Alonso, isn't it? Trying to go into Real Madrid with all the right thought process, but doing what he did at Leverkusen with these egos, with these superstars. You have to adjust, whether that's right or wrong. Whether you're sitting at home going, well, players should just do what a manager wants. Yeah, in theory, yes, but it's not as simple as that. You have to go in. Some egos need massaged. Other people need to kick up the backside. And go back to the respect that clearly was lost when Spence and Van de Ven ignored the manager. And I've rarely ever, if ever, seen that. That has just lost the dressing room, right? But you don't lose a dressing room, or you shouldn't, when you walk in and you're not a big name and you haven't had a big playing career and you haven't managed big clubs. Most players are still giving you a chance. They're giving you, unless you've got a real bad apple in the dressing room, most dressing rooms are giving you the chance still. Okay, Thomas Frank, you're not this superstar player, and you're not coming from Real Madrid or Barca or Bayern Munich or whatever it is. You're coming in from Brentford, but we're going to give you a chance. But something else has happened in the dressing room or on the training ground where these players, some of them, maybe not all, some of them have gone, he's clueless.
Right.
He's out his depth, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Because players just don't start blanking managers because they haven't had a big-time career. Something else is, and we talk about it with Stevie and Xhaka a lot, is that players can smell it when you walk into a dressing room. That authority, that understanding. When a coach puts training sessions on, players will go, I'll tell you what, that was decent.
Right.
I'll tell you what, that was interesting. Oh, I like that. Yeah, he's sharp. He's on it. But ultimately, and the opposite side of the spectrum, if a manager comes in and puts these sessions on that are embarrassing, players that have won World Cups like Romero and Dutch internationals like Van de Ven and many, many others will just go, he thinks we're going to do what they were doing at Brentford. And you lose the dress. And once that happens, you are screwed.
And then we've seen the results of that on the pitch.
And we've seen the results. And yeah, they've rolled their sleeves up in some of the games and came back. But if you watch the bulk of their games, particularly the first half performances, most of the teams they've played against have rolled them over. And then the players have come out in the second half because the home crowd have been battering them and rolled their sleeves up. Playing for themselves probably more than playing for the manager, because 60,000 or however many it is are getting on the back. As soon as that happens as a player, you have to go out and try and quieten the crowd. So it seems to me that a lot has been going on behind the scenes, and I'm not saying it's right, but it seems to have turned a lot of the senior players against Thomas Frank. And by the way, I'm not making excuses for how he's been sacked. You've just got to deal with that as a coach.
Sure.
And I think he sowed his own seeds when he went in there with how he's gone about things.
Who's going to be the next manager, Jules?
Well, I think they're going to go for an interim coach between now and the end of the season, obviously, which I think is the right thing to do, because you just save the season, right? There's nothing for you to play for. You're not going to win the Champions League. You're not going to finish in Europe through the league either. All you need to do is avoid relegation. That's it, basically. So it'd be right for them to go for an interim coach, whether that's Johnny Heitinga, who, remember, we talked about it at the time when he was appointed as Thomas Frank's assistant, not coming at all from the kind of Thomas Frank team that he had at Brentford before, just came out a bit of nowhere, really. And we thought, this is a bit weird. You did wonder already at the time if they were thinking, once Thomas Frank is gone, you've got the perfect interim coach there in Johnny Heitinga, who's got a bit of experience, like he was with Slot at Liverpool. Okay, Ajax as a number one didn't really work out for him, but he could do that job. Ryan Mason could also come and help for the next 3.5 months or so, and that probably would be enough, because I don't think they will go down. And then the big one is who's coming next properly as a permanent coach. Pochettino is the dream that the club wants. They want him back. The fans want him back. They're desperate for him to come back. I think he would like to come back too. In the right conditions, probably that means with the power that he wants, certainly in terms of transfers and things like that. But I think if you give him that, I'm not saying this is the right thing. I always struggle a little bit with managers or even players coming back to a club where they were successful a few years down the line. I'm not sure if it's that the right thing to do, but it's certainly the top of their shortlist. And then below that, you've got De Zerbi, you've got even a Robbie Keane, you've got people like that. But Poch right now is the front runner by far.
Is Bournemouth's form ruled out even Areola? I mean, because he was flavour of the month for a while, and they've sold the best players. They had a great start to the season, then they fell off a cliff, and they're starting to pick it up again. Glasner's the same. It's taken 3 or 4 months for the perception of these managers, not the reality, the perception, which is sometimes difficult for a club to sell to the fans. Oh, look at Palace are spiralling towards the relegation. Bournemouth have had this season. Sometimes fans don't see the bigger picture. These 2 managers, 6 months ago, were the top of the list on a lot of teams. But it's the perception of the seasons that some of them have had. And I think I love watching Roberto De Zerbi's teams. But he's gone from a dumpster truck, at Marseille. If he goes into Tottenham, with how they run that club, he'll burn the place down. I mean, he'll just been, they'll be knocking heads within a few months. So it's a real difficult one. I'm with Gilles in a sense. I don't think the fairy tale story often works, does it, going back in Pochettino? But at this moment in time, there are not too many out there, because we know Man United are looking around. They've got Michael Carrick doing a decent job, but where are they going to go? There might be 1 or 2 other clubs looking for a manager. Who the hell knows what's going to happen at Liverpool at the end of the season? It's unlikely Arne Slot will be out of job, but not impossible. So it's not just going to be Tottenham looking for a top-class manager. So, again, yeah, you might want to go short-term to stave off relegation. Can you believe we're saying that? Talking about Tottenham with their squad, but we are. So you might want to go short-term, but there is a danger that other clubs will come and pickpocket some of these managers that are available, and you'll be left not even with the second best, third best, potentially the fourth best, and you're back to sort of square one again.